Hey guys, and welcome back to the shop. Now that the main structure of the cage is looking good in the Chevelle, let's go ahead and add funny car bars and some roof gussets. Welcome to the Kiefer's Hot Rod Shop YouTube channel. I'm Nick Kiefer. All right, time to make a funny car bar. Let's check it out. Alright, so now that I've got that forward funny car hoop all bent up, I fit it up in the car using some tape to support it, and here's how it fits. Here's a view from the driver's side, just kind of how it interacts with the seat and all that. Alright, so I have to fully disclose that I accidentally added about 2 inches to the width of the kind of the top part of that funny car hoop and made it sit down on the number 15 main hoop crossbar about 2 inches off the center. So I had decided that I wanted to land it right on the center of this bar, you know, that goes across the main hoop there. And I calculated everything out and got everything perfect except for that one dimension. But I sat in it and I liked the shoulder room, and the owner of the car came over, checked it out, and I told him, I was like, you know, it's no problem if I have to remake the bar, but he sat in it, and the shoulder room is just so good for you know, shifting and just kind of operating the car, that I think we're going to stick with it. So here it is from the back. This is nice and vertical, is viewed from the back, and this tilts over at 20 degrees to match the main hoop. So these parts match an angle to get it to fit nicely. I put this part at 12 degrees, so lean like that, and this part ended up being 41 degrees, with this bend being level with these bends. And that's going to match, again, there's going to be a bend on that outer bar that goes from the roof to the door bar, and that's going to run through there. So it looks really good. I like it. He likes it. It seems to be really functional, and I think it's going to work well. There's still plenty of room for a passenger seat. So really, I think it just kind of worked out for the better. Also gives a little bit of room for the seat to move inboard a little bit. You know, it's pretty far kind of towards the door. It's real close to the door. You know, it's not even closed all the way. Still trying to decide what to do with the armrest. I think we're just going to go ahead and do away with it to run the door bar right by the seat there. But again, if this needs to be moved over, there's plenty of room there. And it looks good and it works really well. We'll check out the roof here. I got it fit up really nice and tight against the headliner, and you can just kind of see how that lands back down on the roof bar there. The headliner has like a little bit of a kind of roll to it. That's why it might look like this is crooked, but that's level. You can see against the level part of the main hoop there. Just kind of how that fits. So that's looking good. So now it's just kind of time to tie everything together. So I need to add a 41A, which is this little piece, kind of where this tape actually is right now. And I've got calculation and measurement just to verify for that. So you need to go cut that next, along with a couple of gussets. 25.5 requires 3 3/4 inch tube gussets, or you can make them out of a couple different styles of flat or folded plate, like a 2x2 125 thick gusset plate, or 083 folded metal. But for this we're going to do 3/4 inch tubing, and it's going to be, they require 3. It can be interior or exterior. And you know, with there being 3, you don't need a 4th back here. There's a lot going on here anyway. So the 3rd one is going to go in this area, back on the other side, on the passenger side there. This piece has to be 1.5 inches. I guess, you know, it's such a structural piece, they need it made from this same stuff. This is 1 5/8. This is 1.5 inches, 1.5 inches, 1 5/8, 1 5/8. 1.5 inches. This is 1.5 inches. Just kind of to give you an idea there. So let's go make those. We'll check them out and then fit them up in the car after. All right, over here in my shop, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna make the front 2 roof area braces or gussets out of that 3/4 inch. But first, I'm gonna make that number 41A bar that goes between the main hoop and that inner funny car hoop. I'm gonna go ahead, cut a piece, notch either side, and then go ahead and make a couple of those gussets. pretty nice and ready to fit up in the car. But before I go back over there, I'm gonna go ahead and make those 2 front gusset tubes. So we'll check that out next. Alright, cool. Got these made up too. And you might have saw how I was kind of setting them up. I actually rotated the planes of notch about 3.5–4 degrees to match with these. Actually land after the piece that the upper windshield bar welds to, after that curves down 3.5 degrees. And the plane I was measuring in is actually kind of perpendicular to that plane, so it just kind of worked out. But if they need a little bit of fine-tuning, that's not a real big problem. But I'm gonna go ahead and take all these over there and see how they fit in the car. Back over here at the car and got the gussets in. These look really good. Might have a little cleanup to do here and there, but they look like they fit really well. And I kind of like the size of them. If you want to grab them, you know, to get in and out of the car, it's kind of nice too. But it's not like ridiculously in the way or anything. Got this one taped in too. Same thing, just kind of mirror image. And I snuck that in as well, but it is just a little short. So I either need to tweak this tube a bit. I'm going to measure everything and just make sure. Or if I need to make a new one, this piece will work perfectly to make one of the bars that kind of goes across behind the seat there. After looking at the 41A bar here, not only do I want to make it just a little longer to go out and reach this a little tighter, but also just for helmet and head clearance, I want to go ahead and just kind of curve this up in the middle. And that way it'll kind of match the roof bars as well. So I'm just going to curve it 3.5 degrees right in the middle. That'll give it just about a 1/2 inch of more clearance right here. It's pretty tight above there, you know, so I don't have a ton of room, but that should fit really well. So let's go ahead and I'm going to make that bar and we'll check it out next. Oh yeah, that fits in nicely. Cool, let's check it out. All right, so here's a look at it kind of from the driver's side here. And it's kind of hard to see with this piece of tape up here, but follows the headliner pretty nicely. And also, maybe you can tell that that angle matches this angle nicely too. It's up there tight, and got the notches to fit in real well. It I did have to bring this back just a touch, but I think it's at the proper dimension where it is right now. That tape was a little long, just kind of measuring a little bit, but it's looking good. All right, and here's another look from the passenger side. You can actually see really well how that follows the headliner and kind of mimics the roof bar over there, and just how tight it is. I can barely get my fingertips in there. So that's looking good, and you know, it gives as much room as I possibly can give to the driver for his head and helmet. The only way to avoid having to put a bar here would be to put a rear outer funny car hoop in, which goes in this area. And that's a bar that 25.3 cages, 25.2, and also 25.5s that you sit slightly behind the main hoop have. This is not required to have it, so just in interest of trying to keep things simple and light and spacious, it's not included in this cage. But if this car did have it, this tube could actually be kind of in this area here off to the side, and then this could be replaced with a 3/4 inch tube. Speaking of which, I will be putting a 3/4 inch tube kind of on the other side of the driver's helmet in that same area. So that's kind of another benefit of this super wide funny car hoop here. It does let me bring this out a little more before it hits that curve. So that's that all works out really nicely, makes it really comfortable and awesome. So moving forward from this, there's harness bars. The main one in the middle, as well as a little one on the outside, and then one that wraps around and catches this hoop here. One thing I want to look at next is, of course, this gusset. And I just want to measure this out and come up with a really nice one that kind of lines up with this rear main hoop support bar, and then lands on this tube like in the front here. I also want to make sure it doesn't really crowd the passenger's head or anything. I think the seat, you know, will be fairly in front of this, but just want to make sure everything fits nicely. So that's what we'll do next. All right, so in here on the passenger side, I want to go ahead and I want to start with this rear gusset tube here. And what I've done is I've just kind of roughly measured the angle that these two bars are kind of in relationship with one another at. And it's looking like it's right about 95 degrees. And so I'm going to go ahead and subtract that 95 from 180 and get 85 degrees. Split that in half and get 42.5 degrees, and that's what I'm going to go ahead and notch the first end of this gusset at. It'll sit here, and then that'll travel back to this tube, and I want to kind of hit it right on with this one just to, you know, properly brace everything. It'll tie in really nicely like that. But as you can see, this tube is out of plane with that gusset, and I could calculate that out. It'd take a little while. I could do it, but what I want to go ahead and do for tubes like this, you can kind of eyeball it, just making one side at a time. So I'm going to use that method. Like I said, I'm going to notch that first end at 42.5 degrees, and I'm going to bring the tube over here. Before I notch it, I'm going to put it up against this tube where I want it to sit, and then I'm going to mark the extreme outside. So if we look at this, I'll kind of mark where the piece that's longest is, and that'll give me the angle of rotation on that tube where I need to notch it. And so what I'll do also is figure this angle, and then we'll go notch it and finish the tube like that. Got the 3/4 inch chromoly tubing pulled back out. Gonna go ahead, cut that first, or that piece off first, and then make the first notch. We'll bring it back over there, go through that marking process, finish it up, check it out now. Alright, so I've got you looking up in the spot where this brace goes, and you can see I've cut the tube to that angle, 42.5 degrees. And I'm just going to seat it on there, kind of slide it back approximately into place, and then from there I'm going to go ahead and identify the spot of that maximum length there. Go ahead and mark it on the tube, but what I'm actually going to go ahead and do is just kind of tape this in place so I can also measure that angle that the notch is going to have. All right. Kind of getting everything coplanar here. It's looking like a 45-degree angle is going to be appropriate. So I'll go ahead and start with that. And then once again, I'm going to use that mark I made. Also make sure it kind of lines up with this protractor and everything. When everything's in plane, kind of gives me a clue here. And I'm just going to go ahead, use that mark, make the notch. We'll check that out next. Alright, just a little update. I've kind of been measuring it a little more, and it's looking like a 43-degree angle is going to be a little more appropriate. So that's looking good. Gonna go notch it. Alright, now we've got it notched. Let's see how it fits. Hey, that's pretty nice. Yeah, maybe a little cleanup, but overall looks really good. So that's a pretty nice way to fit a tube like this, and especially, a smaller diameter tube, 3/4 of an inch. The roundness of the notch is relevant, but I mean, it almost looks flat on this thing, so to touch it up with the die grinder is not, a huge amount of work, but it's always good to get a really nice fit, and this looks great. I like how this looks, and it also pretty nicely matches this brace in length, so I think that's going to work really nicely overall. What I need to work on also is cleaning up inside all these tubes, and I need to drill gas expansion holes under where they sit and all that kind of stuff. Even though it's a small tube, it's actually more prone to blowing out because it's such a small internal volume, and actually the wall of this tube is so thin, just because it's lightweight, thin chromoly tubing. the weld blows out probably even easier. But it's looking awesome. All right, and off camera, I actually went ahead and just shortened it a little bit, just so it kind of lines up with the rear main hoop support bar a little better. Got the notches really nice. Had to go back and forth to my shop a couple times to do it, but I think it was worth it. It really fits in there pretty nicely now. So now that everything is in place regarding all these gussets and you know, the main funny car stuff, I'm gonna go ahead and actually pull them all out of the car, and that way I can clean everything up. Also, I do want to add that before I go ahead and pull the stuff out, I'm just going to take a Sharpie and mark where everything sits, and that way I'll know where to drill gas expansion holes and all that. So I'm going to do that, then we'll check it out. All right, so I did go ahead and pull all the loose tubes out of here. At least as far as the funny car hoop and gussets go. So while this is still loose, I want to go ahead and pull it out. You can see where I marked where the gussets land. You can see back here and all that stuff. So I'm going to be working on drilling those gas expansion holes next. And what I want to do is go ahead and drill the ones in this upper windshield bar with it out of the car, just to avoid, you know, any kind of mess ups or anything. So pull that out and go ahead and drill it next. All right, so I'm back over at my shop with the upper windshield bar. I went ahead and pulled it out of the car to drill it, and I went ahead and just took it over here since I was over here grabbing some tools anyway, and I thought it'd be nice to go ahead and clamp it down to the bench and drill these out. So I'm gonna go ahead, drill both of the gas expansion holes for those gussets, deburr them, and we'll go over there and check out the next thing. Went ahead and cleaned it all up, polished it up inside and out on the ends here, and also in the area where that roof diagonal is going to land. I went ahead and polished it up, but now it's just time to stick it in the car. Been working on cleaning the places where it sits, where it's going to weld to on the A-pillar and roof bars. So those are looking nice, shiny and clean too. I've already drilled the gas expansion holes, so that's good to go in that respect. Nothing to it but to do it. All right, so went ahead and slid it in, and as you can see, I've set up these pieces of tape to meet with the front edge of this tube on either side, just to make sure I slide it right exactly into place, and had everything all cleaned up before I slid it in there. So this is looking good. Just need to finalize the position, look closely at this and double check, make measurements and everything. Then it'll be time to tack it in. All right, great. So I've got everything set up as you saw before. I'm just gonna put one tack on this side and then go ahead onto the other side. And I think what I wanna do is I wanna go ahead and put the tack pretty close down here to the bottom. It's a pretty neutral spot that hopefully won't pull the other side of the tube forward or backwards once that tack cools down and shrinks. So you do that, then we'll check out the tack on the other side and go from there. All right, so now that this is tacked in, the next thing that I want to install in the car are the gusset tubes. Now that this is located, I need to mock them up and drill expansion holes in these A-pillar roof bars, very carefully of course, and kind of clean up where they sit, do some final cleanup and fit up on those, and then it'll be time to go ahead and tack them in. But before I do that, I want to go ahead and make a pretty decent weld on the seams, on the inside seams where those gusset tubes will kind of block the access with the torch. So I'm gonna start getting some weld bead on these, and it'll be time to go ahead and tack those on too. So we'll check that process out next. Alright, so before I start welding the driver's side here, I want to go ahead and add another tack connecting the driver's side roof bar to the main hoop here, since it still only has one tack from before. So I've got the insulation in place, the heat shield. I'm going to go ahead, add a tack to the inside here so you won't directly be able to see it, but just want to make sure this doesn't go anywhere while I'm putting that weld on the front here to get ready to put the gusset in place. Alright, cool. Now that I've got those tacks in, I'm going to go ahead and start welding the inside of this, and I'll switch to the other side and pretty much do the same thing. Alright, cool. So now that I've got some beads laid down on these bars here, I'm going to check out these gussets. And off camera I've done a little bit of fit up work and just kind of fine tuning, and just want to make sure they kind of still land in the same spot. And I also need to, I've already marked this one from before, but I need to go ahead and try to drill some gas expansion holes under where these sit. So what I'm going to be doing right now is just kind of fitting these up, making sure they still line up nicely. They're looking good, so that's awesome. And just poke those holes next. Alright, cool. So went ahead and drilled the gas hole there, and the other good thing about marking around where the tube lands, which lets me know where to drill the hole, is I also know the area that I need to clean up, polish up with this 180 grit sandpaper, as well as obviously wipe down with acetone and get ready to tack the tube down onto. So I'm going to do that next, and then get ready to tack those gussets in. Alright, cool. So I've been working on polishing up all three of these gussets, and got them looking pretty nice and fitting well to the cage. So just gonna clean them out and put them up in place and tack them in now. Let's check it out. Got everything cleaned up, and I taped all of the gusset tubes into place, and you can see how everything's fitting. It's all looking nice and tight. Everything's in place. So now I'm just going to go ahead and tack them in. right, so off camera, I've been working on welding some of these joints up, and I just kind of felt like it. It's always a good idea to have a lot of tubes all tacked together before you start welding, but I've got most of the main stuff in here as well as these gussets, so I figure that would hold it nice and square, and so far it's been so good. So you know, here's just kind of some stuff I've been working on. Just been trying to kind of dial everything in. I'm about to weld up a little more on this side, and been working on this corner. Just welded a little more up under that bar, and I got the driver's side looking pretty nice too. And here that is. Just been working on welding all this stuff. It's tricky. This stuff's real thin, so I will admit maybe they're not the prettiest, most consistent welds ever, but I've just been trying to keep it nice and strong and not burn through the metal, obviously. Those are a little nicer. The light kind of makes them look weird too, but what I want to go ahead and do is before I start getting all the funny car stuff in, I want to go ahead and weld a lot of this joint here, which I've already tacked, and we saw that earlier. And I think we'll go ahead and take a look at that on camera, and then I'm also going to kind of counter that by welding up in that rear passenger side corner a little bit more too, kind of under the tube, but on that side. So we'll go ahead and set the camera up, work on that a little bit so y'all can see, and then we'll move on from there. It'll be time to fit up funny car stuff after that. For the 1 5/8 083 tubing, I'm welding at 136 amps, and for the this is 049 3/4 inch, I'm welding at 111 amps. I could maybe turn up a little more for the thin stuff, or maybe I don't quite need that for the thick stuff, but just kind of seems to work. So that's just kind of to give you an idea. Also, I should probably be switching down to a 3/32 tungsten to weld the smaller tubing, but I've been able to weld this stuff with a 1/8 inch tungsten for everything. So that and a gas lens with a number 12 cup, which I think is like 3/4 of an inch, the opening. So just to kind of give you an idea what I'm working with, you know, in case you're curious. But I wouldn't take my techniques for granted. I just kind of use what I use and try to make it work, and do the best I can with it. Here's a look at that setup. Got this big old giant gas lens on here. That's actually a lot less stick out for the tungsten than I actually usually have for especially getting inside a lot of this stuff. With a nice gas lens, I'll pull it out pretty far. I mean, in extreme cases, even over an inch, but I don't mind leaving it about there. In some instances, you know, if a weld gets dirty or contaminated or something, it might start crackling, in which case, you know, definitely stop, clean it up, and you know, draw the tungsten in a bit. But that's pretty good. And again, for getting into stuff, it's nice. And this number 12 cup covers well, running mid-20s cubic feet per hour, like 25, 26. Yeah, just to kind of give y'all guys an idea of what I'm running there. But a lot of this is looking pretty nice, and that looks kind of blobular on the camera, but there you go. It's just kind of the way the light makes it look kind of uneven. I had to go over this a couple times just to get it smoothed out, and I actually burned through tacking that. So, you know, just been working on making it where it's safe and has a nice fillet and all that. So that's where I'm at, and we'll check out. I'm gonna finish this up. Well, not finish it up, but I'm gonna take these a little further, these two welds, and then I'll probably go ahead and do that, and then switch over to the driver's side and kind of weld where I was explaining a minute ago. Let's check it out. give you all kind of a close-up of that. You can see where I continued that weld around the bottom there, and the weld, the light's weird again, but the weld looks nice and shiny, and I think that should work pretty well. This is kind of the area where I had to dab a good amount of filler in, just because if you can tell on the outside, it's a pretty good little valley there. But it's looking good, and everything's coming together nicely. So let's check out the other side next. All right, cool. And here we are on the driver's side. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and pull this piece of tape off, because I don't need to be welding to tape. Also, if you get this stuff hot, the sticky adhesive turns into a real mess. So you want to avoid that if you can. But I'm also going to go ahead and pull this tube out since it's still loose. Get that kind of out of the way here, and that way I can get all around this this joint. And I'm probably going to try to weld it up until about this area. So I'm going to wipe this down with some acetone. Alright, let's check this weld out. Got the heat shield in place, and got my new filler rod. I'm using 1/16 inch ER70 S2. Forgot to say that earlier. Pretty standard for this kind of stuff. Alright, and here's how that looks kind of from my angle. Laid it around there nicely, and it's looking pretty good. Just kind of got to where I couldn't quite see it from where I'm sitting here, but once I drop the frame down and pull the body up, I'll be able to get to all that really nicely. So I'll just wait to finish that weld at that point, but it's looking pretty good. Alright, and to match the passenger side over there, I'm going to go ahead and add some welds to the front corner on the driver's side, and then I think it'll be time to look at some funny car bars. It's looking good. I did go back after and kind of touch this up a little. It was a little inconsistent just because the positioning was weird, but it's starting to be all nice and tied in, and looking good on all the corners. So I think that's pretty good for now. Next, funny car stuff like I mentioned earlier. So let's check it out. Alright, cool. So now that I've been getting everything welded together and getting the braces and everything all welded up in the cage here, I want to go ahead and move on to funny car tubing. And the plans have actually changed a little bit on this thing. So instead of having straight helmet bars behind the seat, we're actually going to go to curved bars to give a little bit more room for a full containment seat possibly in the future, and just for the driver, owner of the car, just to lean the seat back a little bit if it ends up needing to go back some. So with those curved bars, I'm going to have to add a bar which SFI calls 42A, and that is going to kind of mimic the main hoop here. And just like in a 25-3, it's going to go from the main hoop down to the number 15 crossbar. So I've gone ahead and designed that, and I'm going to go ahead, go over to my shop, bend it up, notch it, and we'll fit it in here next. And then after that, we'll check out those curved helmet bars. All right, cool. So we're back over here to make that 42A bar, and this one's going to be made out of 1.5" 065 chromoly. It's going to have 2 bends, so there will be a 70-degree bend at the top, which I'll notch out to kind of lap onto the main hoop, and then that's going to create a 20-degree from vertical bar that'll travel down to a 20-degree bend to bend that tube vertically to meet that number 15 crossbar, and that will mimic my 20-degree from vertical main hoop. So I'm just doing that to match and make it symmetrical around the seat kinda. So I'm gonna go ahead, cut a length of 1.5", and then we'll bend it and notch it and fit it in the car. All right, cool. So I got the tube bent. It's got a 20 and a 70-degree bend. And what you might have seen me doing in that time lapse was, since those add up to 90, really the most important part is that they do add up to 90. Even if it was like a 21 and a 69 or a 71 and a 19, want to go ahead and use the 90-degree square to make sure this ends up right at 90, and this thing's looking good. So next it's just going to be time to notch it. Very special notch on this side, so we'll check out how that is done. And then on this side it's just a perpendicular notch, because this will sit flat down on that number 15 crossbar. So we'll check that out next. Alright, so I've gone ahead and set up for the notch on the top of the tube that will kind of meet up with the main hoop. You can probably see that I've got the axis of the notch lined up with this kind of leg of this 42A bar here, and I gave this 6 inches of tubing past the bend, both for the bender so that it can rest in the kind of the wiper block properly, and have enough tube to make the bend, and also so that I can grab it with the notcher like I have here. So what I've done again is set this axial with this part, this leg. I'm going to run this notch through here, 1 5/8 notch to match the main hoop. This is an 1.5 inch tube, so it'll cut it off before it has to meet the entire diameter or radius of this tube anyway. But I'll still have to cut off a little piece with a cutoff wheel in the middle of the notch, just when the little piece that I start cutting pokes the bottom or the inside of the hole saw here. So we'll see all that in the time lapse. And then I like to do this notch first on these bars so that I can clean it all up and set it up on a piece of tubing to measure the exact distance to the notch on the bottom of the tube. And since I know that number, the distance kind of between my main hoop and that number 15 crossbar, I can measure it after I make this notch. So let's check it out. Well, I've got this all notched up and deburred the ends, and you can see I trued this side up and this side. So nothing left to do but try it out in the car. So let's check it out. All right, let's check this thing out. Nice. That fits in there pretty well. I made it just a little long, just in case I needed to kind of have a tiny bit of extra on there to get it to fit just right, but it looks like I need to trim it just a little bit, but otherwise it's looking pretty good. It'll fit kind of more like this when it's trimmed, but you can see how the angle matches the main hoop and all of that, and how that's gonna go around the driver's seat, and it'll line up with the funny car hoop and all that. So just need to trim it a little bit and get it fitting in here really nice. It'll be perfect. And while I'm just kind of messing around with this, here's kind of a view of it next to the main hoop, so you can see how the curves are pretty much in the same place and everything is parallel and congruent there. So just going to trim it and we'll check it out after that. Alright, I put it in the notcher and went ahead and polished it up with the die grinder and the drum sander, and deburred it on the belt sander and everything, just like the first time, and it's looking pretty good. Might even be able to polish it up just a little more, but when I jam it in there, it's seating on the main hoop nicely, and I think I will probably polish that a little more, but otherwise it's fitting in there really nicely now. Go ahead and check it out in this orientation. Oh yeah, that's like perfect. Cool, looking good. All right, so as you can see, I went ahead and I taped the 42A in place here, and pretty much got it measured out and all set up in there. Another thing that it was really useful for was I positioned it on both sides of the main hoop, and just made sure it fit in just right, and I was able to kind of calibrate this side of the number 15 crossbar here, so that it's symmetrical with this side, and so everything fits nice and parallel between the top of the main hoop and that 15 crossbar. So now that this is in, I want to go ahead and make the curved helmet bars that go kind of behind the seat. I will be spreading them apart with, or just situating them with 9 inches between them. Some people put these a lot closer, but I like to put them on either side of the seat belt openings in the seat, so that the belts can go through the seat and attach to that bar, wrap around them nicely without being bunched up towards the center or anything like that. Make sure to give the driver's neck room when the belts get tight and everything, and make sure they fit through the seat nicely as well. So what that does, this is the inner edge of the outer bar, the number 44 in the SFI manual here, and so it's going to travel up and then hoop forward, and it's going to hit the main hoop on this curve here. Here's kind of the center line of this whole setup. I've marked it top and bottom, so I have figured how far over the center line of this tube is going to be, and taking the difference here, I have subtracted the difference to where this main hoop starts to curve, subtracted that from this distance to get the distance from where that curve starts to where this tube lands. And so, knowing that this is bent with a 6.5 inch center line radius, I've been able to calculate a right triangle using this angle that I figured from this distance. And then it's given me the distance between top of that right triangle and the center line of this tube, telling me how much shorter this bar needs to be in that situation versus if it was just hitting this horizontal top piece of the main hoop. Just kind of a little explanation of some of the math there, which I am planning to get into deeper in a dedicated video. So I do want to do that. I kind of keep promising it, but I am planning to do that. So hopefully pretty soon I'll be able to put that up in the next couple of weeks or something. But I want to try to make it interesting. That's the hard part. Anyway, so I'm going to match the other bar by bending it in the same place, and then I'm going to stop the bend at an appropriate point and then continue it with a little straight section so that the curves are in the same place, and hopefully that works out nicely and looks good. And that's what I'm going to do next, is gonna go ahead, head over to my shop, and I'll make at least one of those bars. I think I want to start with this inner one once I figure out all the dimensions for both of those. Just start out with that, check it out, see how it looks, see how it fits, and then if it's all good, continue on to this outer one. So check that out next. Over here at my shop, and I've got the tube sitting right over there. Time to cut a couple lengths out and bend them up, notch them up, and make some helmet bars. Interestingly enough, SFI requires 1 5/8 for the left bar, kind of the outermost one, and then 1 1/2 0.65 for the inner. So 1 5/8 0.83, 1 1/2 0.65 respectively. And I think the purpose for that is design wise. When the helmet goes back behind the main hoop, that left helmet bar kind of becomes the main outside surrounding member protecting the driver. So they just want that 1 5/8. Also, sometimes people like to land their number 51 main hoop support bars that go to the back of the car on that bar. So it's just good that it's 1 5/8. Regardless, I'm going to be making them out of those 2 different materials. I'm going to start with the inner one, which is made out of 1 1/2 0.65 first. So we'll check that out next. Alright, so I've got this thing made up, and as you can see, it's got an 80-degree curve. It's got this little straight leg, and then obviously this part's straight. Notch this side for the main hoop and this side for the number 15, and this will match the curve on the other part. That other curve's going to be 105 degrees, and it's just going to keep on going around, and it's going to meet up with where that main hoop curves down and is shorter than the part where this end meets on this tube. So I think it's a little long right now, but I'm going to take it over to the car, try it out, and make sure it is before I trim it. So let's look at it. All right, cool. I'm going to go ahead and try this piece out. All right, yep, it's looking like it's a little long. I can kind of jam it into place though. This will be out from where it is right now. so it'll kind of be more in this area. I'm gonna have to grind in a notch where this number 42A is, but it's gonna kind of meet up like that. Kind of scoot it back over for right now, and the other one will be next to it, kind of doing the same thing. So that's looking good. That's going to give room for the seat to kind of sit back in this area, and just need to trim it a little bit and it'll be perfect. Cool. All right, cool. So I went ahead and trimmed it a little bit, and it's fitting in there really nicely. You can see that notch matches up, and so is the bottom. Once again, this will be moving a little bit, but you can see from the side here just kind of how that's going to give the seat a little more room to kind of lean back into this area. And then if it's a thicker seat eventually, like a full containment seat or something like that, it'll just kind of give room for all that structure and padding. Also, it's kind of hard to tell, but you can see how on the outer bar, when this curve continues around, instead of taking that little straight jog, it's going to hit the main hoop right at the end of that curve there. But we'll check that out later when I make that tube. I have a die with the same 5.5 inch center line radius for the 1 5/8. I typically use a 6.5 inch just for everything generally, with the 1 5/8, just to keep it from you know, ovaling too much, and to keep it nice and strong and smooth, and usually fits in spots really nicely. But to match that, I'll use the 5.5 center line radius, and we'll check that out next. All right, back over here, time to make that outer helmet bar. As you might be able to see, I've got the 1 5/8 tubing sitting up there on that jack stand, ready to cut a length off of, and I'll be putting a 105-degree bend in that, since that tube leans back even more than the main hoop. It's going to have to go an extra 15 degrees from 90 to meet up with that main hoop, and then I'll be notching either side, and we'll fit it up in the car. So let's check it out. right, so I made the piece. It might be a little long. Measuring it, it looks like it might have a little extra length, but I can kind of fine tune that here. Also, I kind of wanted to explain the notch. So this is catching the main hoop as it slopes down from the horizontal portion. And so I matched that angle that the tube is at that point with the notch here. This angle in this kind of way, in this respect, will be in plane, or actually perpendicular to the plane of the main hoop. So I don't really need to angle this part. I just grabbed it by that leg that comes straight out and made this notch, but I'm gonna go check it out in the car, see if I need to trim it or clearance it at all up here, and we'll go from there. So let's check it out. All right, let's go ahead and try it out. I have to admit, I did try it out off camera because I forgot to bring the light back over here. But it's looking good, just a little long. So you can see how the bottom hits and the notch isn't quite laying down onto the main hoop. But trying it out like this, looks like the notch is going to work well. Looks like the angle's good and everything. Kind of going through the motion here, it looks like it'll land right where it needs to go. So that's good. I think the top's going to be really close. But I'm just going to keep trimming the bottom and kind of sneak up on it. So I'm going to run over there, do that, and we'll check it out after. All right, I went ahead and shortened this up a little bit. Let's see if I'm getting close. Oh yeah, getting pretty close. Okay, let's see if it'll fit like here. Yep. Cool. All right, so I think I'm gonna trim it one more time. All right, so I trimmed it just a tiny little bit. Let's see how it fits. All right, yeah, getting really close. Still needs a bit more, but I just want to sneak up on it, but it's starting to fit on there. Just needs to scoot over this way and be just a tiny bit shorter. All right, I took a pretty good length off of this thing, trimmed it down a bit. Oh yeah, it's certainly getting there. Cool. That is just about right where it needs to sit. So you can kind of see how that's fitting. Definitely want to make sure there's enough room to weld both of these, but it looks pretty accessible. Otherwise, I think just a little trimming. I'm going to check out the notch on top and see if there's anything that needs to be trimmed before I take any more length off, but that's looking nice and parallel to this one. This one will be moving over, but the main hoop and number 15 crossbar are parallel where this sits, so it can slide back and forth without any difference in geometry. But this one needs to go right here, and it's looking good. Cool. All right, I wanted to show you guys real quick from the side just kind of how this fits. So you can see it's still a little long. I've got it kind of leaning away from the camera a little bit, but also you can see kind of where I put that dark Sharpie mark next to that arrow, right against the notch there. I want to go ahead and just kind of polish that with the die grinder a bit, just so that the other parts of this notch sit down on the tube a little closer. You can kind of see the very top has a little bit of openness, kind of hard to see from this angle. But I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'm going to shorten it just a little bit to get it slid over to the right, to the little bit shorter part of the main hoop there. So getting close, I'm going to do that, and then we'll check it out. All right, trimmed a good bit more off, and then clearanced it in that spot I was just showing you. So let's see how it fits. Oh yeah, it's looking nice. Cool. And I can ease it on over into alignment with my marks. And that's looking pretty good. I think it, if anything, it's still maybe a little long, but I think it also could be the trough of that notch. So I think I want to work on that just a little more, but you can really get an eye for how this thing looks, and I like it. Looks like it's going to be really sweet. And then again, nice and lined up with this one. This one will be moved over about to here. And I think I've decided that I want to end up moving this one out some more. I want to give ample room for a wide array of seats. Still a couple of options as far as the seat for this car. Full containment stuff like that. So just want to have room for that. So that's why I'm giving it a little more room than I kind of originally anticipated, but more room's better, and it shouldn't be, it shouldn't encroach into the passengers area. There's plenty of width in this car. That's the center line of the car here, so you can kind of get an idea. The funny car hoop kind of goes over to this side a couple inches, and so within that even I still have some room to move. So regardless of that, looking really good, really close. I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup on this and get it to fit, and then we'll check that out later, but it's looking awesome. All right, cool. So I went ahead and made those revisions and got this put in place here. Let's see, I kind of push it up a little tighter there, but you see how nice the notch looks. But also, check out how parallel these bars are. They look sweet. Here's kind of a look from the side here and off to the front, from the front. Looking good. All right, so what I'm working on now, that I have this in place, I've gone ahead and pulled this out, and I've positioned this where I want it in the car. And as you can see, I've got a ton of marks down here. I've just been trying to figure out exactly where the seat needs to be centered for adequate clearance and for the bolsters and all that kind of stuff. And just have a ton of marks on here, but they all add up to something. So what I've done is I've positioned this where I want it, and now it's time for me to shape the notch of this tube. So I line it up with this mark here. I need to shape that to fit onto both of these tubes. So again, if I move this over, here, I'll move over a little more. It mates up perfectly with the main hoop there, but as you can see, as I move it into the position it needs to be in, that's going to hit. So what I've done is I've been kind of eyeballing the space that makes and just kind of how everything interacts, and I'm going to be just trimming this with a die grinder manually until I get it to fit just right. So that's what I'm going to work on next, and we'll check out how it fits. And the other interesting thing is the relationship between this helmet bar and that 42A is, according to my design, will always be the same. So it's just kind of a mirror to the main hoop, and this helmet bar, number 44, 45 and 42A is just a mirror. So even if I have to move these over one way or another, that relationship stays the same. So once I shape it to fit there, it'll be set just like this one's set. So we'll check that out next. All right, so I'm over at my shop, mainly just because the die grinder's over here, but I'm able to clamp this tube down onto the workbench here. I've got my mark made up, and I've switched to this really coarse, I think it's a 36 grit drum, and I'm going to just kind of start grinding away at this thing to rough in the shape of that other tube. Then I'll fine tune it with a 60 grit. We'll check it out, look at it in the car, and all the above. So I'm gonna get started. All right, so I've got you looking in the driver's side quarter window here, And just going to take a look at how this is fitting up so far, and just to kind of get an idea before I go too far of how all that needs to go. Again, fits up nice and tight without the bar in place, but needed to fit up with this. So I'm going to kind of take a Sharpie here and trace around where I need to trim. Make sure this is right. And I'll just kind of do this back and forth, die grinding it, and we'll check it out here in a little bit. I've just kind of been working on it, and it's getting really close. What I did is I actually took some acetone and just wiped any Sharpie marks I had off, so that I don't get any confusion marking from now on. But that's exactly what I'm about to do, is make some more marks, polish this thing a little more, and just keep working on getting it closer and closer to fitting perfectly. All right, back over here at my shop one more time. And I want to kind of show you, here's the mark on the piece. Maybe you can kind of see it there. And that's just, you know, I kind of made that looking at how this tube sat against those other tubes, the main hoop and the 42A there. And so I'll just be taking the drum sander and kind of grinding it like this. Now I could go at this just kind of point blank from the side and just literally shape it like that, but you know, it's always a good idea to put this drum sander kind of in the position that the actual tube will be. That way the inside is properly kind of tapered to fit the tube, and it's just not that the outside is profiled. I'm going to go back to this 36. It moves metal really nicely, and I'm just going to grind most of this mark off, polish it up a little bit, take it over there, and try it out again. So we'll check that out next. All right, let's check this thing out. Oh yeah, that's getting nice and close. I'm going to give it a nice thorough look over and make sure everything's just exactly where it needs to be, and polish it up a little more. And I think what I'll do is we'll just go ahead and check it out once it's all fitted up, but just going to kind of continue the same process, just going back and forth, sneaking up on the notch, and I think it's going to be awesome. Cool. All right, cool. So I finished shaping this tube up and got it notched in nice and tightly against both of those tubes that it meets up with. It's looking pretty good and tight. It's just kind of hanging off a little bit there, but you can see how that fits. Now, this is the perfect opportunity to talk about, I've had at least one comment regarding, you know, like, well, when I try to make a tube, it just doesn't fit, or I mess up. And, you know, maybe sometimes on my videos it seems like I don't mess up or hardly ever mess up, but I do. And the fact is, everyone does. And I don't include a lot of that on the video because it's kind of boring and pointless to watch somebody mess something up and redo it. But this is a really good opportunity for me to just kind of explain the process of that inside tube. Now, the very first one I made, I actually notched short. So the distance from here to here, I just got wrong after I polished the tube and notched it and polished it and everything. It was just wrong. So I remade it, and that's the one that we looked at that I was fitting up there and trying to notch out for that 42A bar to meet into. But let me show you something. So here's that first one. It was too short. Here's the one we were looking at that I was matching up to that tube, and I actually ended up grinding it too much. And so it had a big old huge gap, and I kind of tried to grind the other part of the gap and make it fit. But one important thing with these bars is they need to be parallel. You might kind of be able to see how parallel they are, and if one's askew, that harness bar is just going to be at a little bit of an angle, which might kind of throw off the seat bracket, and it bugs me. It might be usable, but I just don't like to have a final product that's just not right. So I ended up, I was here till like 2 a.m. one day, and I usually work in the evenings anyway, but I made one which I ended up messing up and got so mad I threw it to the woods. So that's missing, and that would be here. And then I had this much left on my 1.5" 065 stick, so I cut off the amount I needed to make another bar. When I cut it off with the stick, that just leaves this little piece. Well, I realized that this one is heavily gouged and would just not be suitable for building into part of a roll cage. This might be able to be polished out or something, but then it would be thin, and you know, I just don't like to make somebody's nice roll cage out of a piece of material that's damaged. It's just kind of a personal preference, if nothing else. And so you can see each time I make this bar, it was 37 inches of material, because I have to have a little leg here for not only making the bend in the bender, but also to grab while I make this notch, because I can't grab this side because it's curved and out of line with the notch. So you can imagine 1, 2, 3, 4, then finally this one is the one that I've ended up with, and it fits well. I'm happy with it, but that's just kind of what it takes sometimes. And this stuff, by the time I have it freight shipped to me, you know, because they're big old long 20, 22, 18, whatever foot sticks they come in, it just varies. It's whatever the mill puts out. It costs me almost $9 a foot for this stuff, you know, so you got to just think about that. Made me pretty angry, but you know, that happens. You can't charge the customer for that stuff, but what you can do is look at what you got, and well, here's a pretty good piece. I've already cut off of the first one. Nice straight piece, and I can use it to make the seatbelt bar. You know, number 48 there. Could make number 47 out of part of this too. I might be able to use it. This is a 25.5, but you know, maybe on another 25.3 project I can use it as part of the door X. You know, so you got to get smart with this kind of stuff, but it'll really it'll hurt you bad sometimes, and it really handed me my butt. But how it goes, just do your best, be careful, sneak up on things, and that's just kind of my PSA as far as that goes. It wasn't a good day, but got that piece made. I think it's going to work really well, and as you can see, got it fitting really nice. Now it's just time to move on to that seatbelt bar that I mentioned before. So I'll make it out of one of those scrap pieces that I messed up on earlier. And we'll check that out next. Just a real simple parallel pair of notches, but I got to be careful because one side is 1.5 inches and one is 1 5/8. So don't want to mess that up, but we'll check that out next. Cool. Got this over here at the car. I went ahead and polished it up, and I also took a minute to kind of measure and mark out the side that is 1 5/8. Just gonna sneak that in here. That's gonna look good. Go ahead and peel a couple pieces of tape and mock it up. Alrighty, and that's about where it's going to go for final install. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of measure everything out, but just to kind of take a look at everything, that's pretty sweet. And then these are actually parallel, you know, going up and down, so that's why I could kind of locate the bottom with the tube and then slide it right up. I mean, it almost just go all the way to the top, you know, but that's looking good. All right, cool. So now that the number 48 harness bar is in place, it's time to go ahead and make number 46 and 47. So we'll check that out next. I've decided to make those curved so that it'll give maximum room for the seat to sit back in there if necessary. I've started working out all the calculations for how far the curve needs to go and for the notches and all that stuff. The outer one is going to be 1 5/8, and the inner one is going to be 1.5 inches. That's just what SFI requires, so we'll check that out next. I'm going to make the outer one first. We'll check it out, then follow with that inner one. All right, back over at my shop, got a nice piece of 1 5/8 083. I'm going to go ahead, mark one in, bend it, start notching, make that little number 46 bar that goes between the main hoop and the outer helmet bar. We'll check it out, fit it up in the car, and see how it looks. Well, I already went ahead and put the piece in place, and check that out. Man, that fits sweet. Look at that. Dad was over here and I decided just to stick it in there to check it out, and he's like, man, that thing looks like a dragster. Like how the old rails had those hoops around the back of the driver. Looks super cool. And fits really nicely, so that's awesome. Now it's just time to go ahead and make up this one, number 47, on the other side. It'll fit the same way, but these tubes are 1.5 inches, whereas these are 1 5/8 inches. So this one will be just a little longer between tubes just because of that 1/16 of an inch radius difference. And it'll also be made out of 1.5 inches instead of 1 5/8. All right, cool. So got a piece of 1.5 inch 065 here. Time to make that SFI number 47 bar that goes between the inner helmet bar and that 42A bar that comes down between the main hoop and the number 15 main hoop crossbar. I'm gonna start off with the bend. I've already cleaned up and marked this where I want to start the bend. So let's check the time lapse out and we'll see how it fits in the car. All right, back over here at the car. Brought the piece. Let's see if it fits. All right, let me move this tape out of the way. Cool. That looks pretty decent, actually. Let's tape it in here and check it out. right, let's check this thing out. So it lines up against my lower mark there. Everything looks nice and even, and seems to fit up pretty well. Might need a little fine tuning, but honestly, looks pretty good. That's cool. Kind of look across here and see how everything goes. That's awesome. All right, so as you guys can see, I've gone ahead and installed the 41B inner forward funny car hoop into the car. Here's a quick view of how that looks from the passenger side. I've got it supported by this kind of doubled piece of tape here. And the next thing on the list is to go ahead and make the tube which is going to support this. There's a few tubes connecting helmet guards and stuff, but the main one is a bar that SFI calls 41A, and that can be either in the roof area or the inside side area. Kind of in the previous setup before we did the curved helmet bars here, it has to go in the roof area because this number 47 continues all the way to that. But in this instance, it's not required in the roof area. I've decided that I want to go ahead and put it in line with these harness bars. So it's going to go between the 42A and this bar right across here, nice and level. And then what I've seen a lot of people do is they'll run an 1.5" tube here, which this 41A has to be 1.5" 065 to match these two bars, and they'll also run one kind of in the roof area. I'm considering, for this particular cage, I'm considering putting one up there which mimics this roof bar, so kind of in this area, but I'm still kind of making final decisions on that. I want to keep it away from the driver's head when he's not wearing a helmet. You don't want to hit your head on stuff like that if something happens, or if you run over a pothole or whatever. So I'm trying to make all of that safe and functional, but I've already calculated everything out. So let's head over to my shop, make that tube up, and we'll check out how it fits in the car. All right, over here in my shop, and I've got one of those rear helmet bars that I messed up. So this is a nice piece of 1.5" 065, and this part's nice and straight. So I'm going to go ahead, cut the curve off, and use this to make that bar to reinforce the funny car hoop there. So we'll go ahead, put you on the time lapse, and check that out. All right, let's see how this thing fits. Looking pretty good here. So one thing that I'm gonna have to do a little bit on this tube, I think, is I'm going to need to clearance this part here just because it's starting to catch the inside of that curve a little bit. Otherwise, all the angles and everything look good, and I'm just going to coat that a little bit with the die grinder and should drop in perfectly. Cool. Alright, well, I've been working with this tube a little bit, and you can see it's fitting in there pretty nice and level. Just want to ease it down just a touch more. But what I need to do is right where I've marked on the tube here on either side, I just kind of need to more or less round that out, or kind of grind it back with the die grinder a little bit. And I'll pinch this little tiny gap up here and nicely, and the rear's looking good. But as a matter of fact, that's a new tube, so I just made another one again, but it was just like a 1/16 of an inch short on top here, but having that other one helped me get this one just right, other than just those little touch-ups I need to do. But let me fit this thing up and we'll check it out after that. All right, cool. This thing's looking pretty good. I might give it a final little fit up later, but I'm gonna wait to do all that until all this stuff is tacked into place. But I'm happy with where that is for now. And next it's just gonna be kind of time to add some helmet guard bars. Oh, and you can see I've got this tube from before just sitting in here to space this properly. While I was fitting that, just want to make sure everything's in the right place. But I'm gonna have 3/4 inch helmet guard tubes up in this area, and I'm still trying to decide if I want to do an 1.5 inch tube here, or even just put this one in here. Trying to decide how I want to do this, just kind of considering how the driver fits in this car. So other than that, 3/4 inch helmet guard bars, the same 3/4 inch material as these gussets. That's next. This stuff's all looking good. So I'm gonna move on to that, and it'll be time to clean stuff up to get ready to tack together. All right, cool. I've got the 3/4 inch tubing ready. Gonna go ahead and make one of those helmet guard bars that goes on top of the cage in the funny car hoop area. I've gone ahead and offset my notcher so that the tube will just kind of sit on top of the tube it's laying on. Since it's a 3/4 inch tube sitting on 1.5 inch and 1 5/8, I've offset that notch 3/8 of an inch to achieve that. So we'll check that out next. Let's lay this thing in there and see how it fits. All right, so it's it might be a little long. It's kind of pushing this tube a little bit, so I'll have to kind of fine tune that, but otherwise drops in there, and looks like it gives plenty of headroom. Here that thing is kind of from the inside, and see it just kind of sits up on there and gives pretty much the maximum headroom possible. So that's pretty nice. I think while I have the notcher set up like that, I'll make another one because I am planning to run a pair of those. But that's it's looking sweet. All right, I worked with this thing a little more and seems to be fitting in there all right. As I move it over to this side, it starts to catch the curvature there. So I guess what I'll plan to do is just kind of use this one on this side, and then I guess I'll make one with like a couple degrees of angle just so it sits nice and level on all that. But lengthwise and everything, this one's looking good, so it's nice. I need to add that one extra helmet guard made out of 3/4 inch chromoly, so I guess it's time to go ahead and add that. All right, cool. Looks good and sits down on those tubes nicely, so that's awesome. All right, cool. So I've gone ahead and as you can see, I've removed the tube that I had sitting here, and I've kind of arranged these helmet guard bars as I want them to sit for final install. But now I've finally kind of decided how I want to lay out this second 41A. I call it second because there's the one that goes here, which is sitting on the floor right now, but there'll be one here too, just to keep everything strong in the middle of the span of this inner funny car hoop. So I've drawn all that up, calculated out it's gonna have a bend in it that'll match the roof bar here. So let's go over to my shop, bend that up, notch it up, then we'll check it out in the car after that. All right, back over here at my shop, and got a piece of 1.5 inch 065 pulled out of the pile. Starting a new one for this. Gonna cut about 16 inches or so off, and then now start the bend and notches. So I'll put you on the time lapse and we'll check it out. All right, cool. So I've got the tube in the car, but full disclosure, once again, just as some of these tricky tubes go, that is not the same tube. I made the first one, and it actually ended up about an 1/8 inch short, and that rear notch was not quite at the right angle. It's really hard to measure those angles properly in the notcher, but it gave me a good thing to kind of measure off of, so I ended up with this. And I actually kind of have it wedged in there. You can see it's pushing this tube kind of off of where it needs to sit. I need to work on the notches a bit. So I notched this one at a little bit less angle. So I made the short side, since both notches go like this, there's a short side on the bottom and a long side trough to trough on top. But I made the short side a little long, so I can just kind of clean that up and get it to sit down in there nice and tight. But otherwise, you can kind of see how this looks. Maybe you can tell on the camera, but if you look to where that's curved, the roof bar, and where this one is, you can kind of tell how it follows that curvature looking from the side. Bends right here, lines up with that. And then also what I've done at that same point is I've curved this where the front's straight, and then it angles to meet this 42A. So it just mimics the roof, whereas this part's straight, and then this curves to meet the number 10 main hoop. That's kind of the same. It's a little more exaggerated just because of how the geometry of all this is, and you know, arm clearance, elbow room, shifter room, whatever you want to call it. But that's how that's looking. And all I need to do is go ahead and take the die grinder and start cleaning up in here. And it'll be kind of a little bit of a process where I look at the notch and just kind of determine kind of where it needs to be ground away to make it fit really nice. But do that next, and I'll show y'all how it fits after that. All right, so I went ahead and ground the bottoms. It's still in there tight. You can see it's kind of spreading this tube still, but now the tops are starting to they're tight, and the bottoms are, the gap is a little bigger. So just kind of have to go back the other way and adjust that way. I'll test it out again. We'll check out how it fits after that, but it's looking good. All right, cool. I think I've got it fitting just about as nicely as I can get it right now. I want to leave a little bit on there. As you just heard, I hit this with the light of the camera. It's still a little loose, but meaning this is a little long, pushing that out, tightening this tape up here. But I don't want to exactly fine tune that until it's time to start tacking everything in, just in case I have to make some fine adjustments. But it is right there, and the notches are fitting nice and tight, so that's really awesome. And you can see also, let me kind of line this up here. If you look at the roof bars, everything lines up pretty nicely. Hard to tell with this light. Maybe I can kind of figure that out. And then the rear, nice and parallel as well. So that looks good. And again, you can kind of see how that lines up the roof there. It's kind of hard to catch on camera. It might show up pretty nicely, but looking good. What I need to do next really is, other than maybe getting some of the 3/4 inch helmet guard bars in there, is get everything cleaned up and ready to tack together. All right, so I'm at the point now where I want to go ahead and pull everything back apart and start cleaning up the tubes inside and out. And I also need to drill gas expansion holes in all the landing spots. But off camera, I went ahead and I made a rear helmet guard bar. It might seem kind of unnecessary since there'll be a seat here, but in my mind, if anything were to happen where this car got turned around backwards and hit a stationary object, or if somebody hit the back of this car, if the driver's head was jostled back hard enough to bend the seat, I wouldn't want the helmet or anything getting stuck back there. So just put this in level with where the rest of the helmet guard bars are going to go. It was just a really simple tube to make, a couple straight notches that I cleaned up, just like the number 48 harness bar, any simple tube parallel notch bar like that. Interestingly, this kind of plane ended up almost right exactly where this tube reaches, like its vertical direction. So if you look at it, right about where it's vertical just for an instant, and this curve is where that ended up. So that's kind of clean looking. I would say I meant to do that, but it just happened to be. It's just something that kind of lined up neat. I'm gonna mark where everything lands just with a Sharpie. I'm gonna mark around all these tubes so that I know where to drill holes for the gas expansion inside the tube as I weld, just so that when I finish the weld it doesn't blow that weld out. It's nice to do that to ventilate everything into one point. In this case, I've got a hole through the frame where all that gas can breathe out of the entire tube system and won't blow out the weld when I complete it and seal everything up. So I'm going to do that, and that mark will also show me where I need to polish the tubing for a clean weld. So we're going to check that out next. And I'm going to break all this down, clean it up, put it back together kind of incrementally, and then tack it all in. We'll check that out next. right, cool. So as you've been watching, I've been working on getting all the tubing all cleaned up and polished. But there's one thing I want to do before I start taping everything back in to start tacking everything. Right up here, I'm going to kind of turn you around. So right up here where the rear main hoop support tube meets the main hoop, as you can see, there's the gas expansion hole for the outer helmet bar. I want to go ahead and weld that joint on this side so that I don't have to reach in there later, because it's going to be really tight once that bar is in there. It should be possible to weld either of those pieces. They won't be that close in proximity, but it's just easier now, so I want to go ahead and do that. All right, cool. So I've got this main hoop number 15 crossbar all nice and cleaned up. I'll even show you inside of it. Nice and shiny inside. Got it all polished up on the outside too. I went ahead and I cleaned the main hoop where this sits, and you might have noticed I have some worm gear style hose clamps on the main hoop there. And what that does is that just kind of dictates where this sits. So those set the level. I can just slide this in, put it right back where I need it, where I mocked all the funny car stuff up. So that's all ready to go. Everything's clean, so we'll slide that into the car and then get ready to set everything else up and tack this in. All right, cool. So now that this number 15 crossbar is in, and I've been working on polishing up and cleaning inside and out of all the other funny car bars, what I want to go ahead and do is I want to start mocking up everything that's kind of inside of the main hoop here. So that includes the helmet bars, the harness bars, and the 42A curved bar that goes between the 15 bar and the main hoop here. And once I do that, I'm going to work on tacking that 42A and this number 15 cross member in place, just to kind of situate everything. I want to do that with everything else mocked up, also just to make sure it all is fitting together properly. But once I tack those in place, I'm going to take the harness bars, 46, 7, and 8, and then 44 and 45 helmet bars. I'm going to take those back out and weld around the top of that 42A. Reason being, other bars kind of land on that weld joint, so I want to go ahead and complete that at least where other tubes land, so that it's welded under the joint and I'm not missing a spot in there. Just maximum strength. And then I'll work on setting everything back up, tack it all in, and then move forward to the forward hoop and all of those reinforcements and helmet bars and stuff like that. So that's what we'll check out next. All right, cool. So now that all this stuff is in place, I'm gonna go ahead and tack this 42A bar in. I'm gonna start at the bottom, and then I'm gonna use this carpenter square to fine tune the angle, and go ahead and tack the top. And then what I need to do is pull some of these tubes out of the way, or maybe just all of them, and clean them up one more time. And while I'm doing that, I need to weld the back of this where this tube lies on it. So we'll check that out now. All right, let's check this angle out. That's like perfect, cool. Go ahead and tack the top. And I just threw a quick fusion tack on there. It's looking good. I might actually budge this over a tiny bit, but everything's looking great otherwise. Cool. Cool. It's nice and tight. That should be good to go. What I do want to do is I'm going to add another tack up here with some filler just for strength. I don't want this coming loose prematurely, or actually at all at this point. It's in for good. So here we go. All right, should be in there nice and strong. Just a little bit of measurement and verification to do, and then it'll be time to go ahead and weld the back side. And I'll also, since I know this is just right, go ahead and add a tack back here, and then carry on with the rest of it. Looking good. All right, cool. So I did some measuring, and I tweaked this just a tiny little bit. I actually kind of had to put one end up and one end down, but just a tiny little bit, like a 32nd of an inch. But everything's measuring super even now. So I'm going to go ahead and just put a tack on either side to hold this bar in place. Then it'll be time to move on with the rest of them. Cool. It's in. All right, cool. So I've got you with me here in the back seat. We're looking at the back of the main hoop and the 42A here. And you can see I've got my insulation here and all that. But what I'm about to do is go ahead and weld the back of this before I put that helmet bar here and cover it all up. So I want to go ahead and bring this across. I don't want to get too much heat in it at this point. Number one, because you have to take this stuff in stages just so you don't get the headliner hot, but also I don't want to warp this main hoop at this point or anything. I want to get all these bars in here, which will strengthen everything and keep it from warping while I weld it. But you know, weld a little bit more than exactly necessary, just so that I've got some out of the way where it's kind of tight. But that's going to be next, so I'm going to do it in a few heats just to again avoid getting anything too hot. All right, cool. So I was able to get that pretty much halfway around. Sorry you're sideways there, but it's just the tripod. Yeah, pretty decent little weld there for being crammed in the back of this car here, but actually, I must say, pretty nice back seat in the Chevelle. Anyway, that's looking good. Going to let this cool and go ahead and stick those other tubes in to get ready to tack them in. Gonna go ahead and put a little weld on the bottom too while I'm back here. All right, yeah, there's just a couple little beads, but kind of a tricky spot there, so onto the front. Alright, cool. So as you just saw, we've got everything kind of positioned and taped up in here, and I want to go ahead and I'm going to start by tacking this outer helmet bar in, number 44. And I've just kind of been working on measuring everything out and making sure everything's at right angles and all that kind of stuff. So this is looking good. So I'm going to put one little tack here, and then probably stick one up here as well. And so I go ahead and do that, and then kind of work my way inside, making sure everything's lined up. Sweet. I'm going to go ahead and tack the top up. Alright, cool. Looking perfect. Alright, so what I'm going to do now that this is tacked in, what's happened is this actually needs to be clearanced a little bit at the top where the weld is. And I'll kind of try to show you real quick just kind of how it's contacting back in that area. So I need to polish that down just a little bit to fit it up just right, kind of as it was before, but just so that everything's tight and the notches are hard up against the metal of the other tubes. So I'm going to go ahead, pull this stuff apart, polish it up, fit it up, put it back together, and there'll be time to tack it all in. Alright, cool. Let's check this thing out, see how it fits. Alright, so that looks pretty good. It seems to be a little tight down here, so I'm going to go ahead and touch that up a little bit, and we'll check it again after that. Alright, cool. Got this fitted up, and it's looking great. Alright, get everything nice and clean with the acetone here. I've already polished the end, deburred it, and wiped off the tube itself. That's looking great. It's time to put it in place. Cool. All right. It's all looking nice. Cool. All right, cool. So I've got everything all set up. I actually had to do quite a bit of fit up with this bar just after I welded that. I guess, you know, things moved around just a tiny bit, but got it sitting in there really nice. That is looking good. Cool. All right, measuring it, I want to go ahead and push the bottom over just a little. Perfect. Alrighty, everything's looking pretty good. Gonna go ahead and add another tack to the bottom. Cool, looking good. Now what I want to do is go ahead and fine tune this. I'm gonna measure it a bunch and get it all taped in really nicely. Then we'll start tacking that. All right, cool. So I've been measuring everything and got everything pretty close. I'm gonna go ahead and put some real light tacks on this thing that I can still kind of heat up and fine tune. And I'm actually gonna start with the 48 harness bar there. And I'm gonna tack that in and then kind of go to either side. Well, that's looking pretty good. I think everything's nice and level. Just have one tack on each end of each tube, so I can still move around a little bit, as you kind of saw me doing a little just now. So that's looking great, and now it's just time to start cleaning everything up. And I think I'm going to weld a little bit of this while I can easily get to it. Then it'll be time to move forward, so we'll check that out next. So got to weld this 42A to the number 10 main hoop just to throw out some SFI numbers, but we'll check that out next. I've got the tungsten way stuck out on the torch, but with the gas lens you can do that. You can even stick it out a little further if you have to. The trick is, you know, obviously try not to weld like in a breeze or anything, but if there's a place to capture all of that argon, it really helps. And if you get any kind of fizzing, you just have to back off and figure out how to get some more coverage. So hopefully we'll avoid any of that. But I'm going to go ahead and weld around here. I think I'll also add a tack or two onto this bar just while I'm up here. So we'll check that out too. Cool. Alright, that's looking pretty good and also pretty hot, so go ahead and spray some air on there. Cool. So I'm going to continue around the front, and that's looking pretty good. It's really tricky to weld in notches like that. You just have to set yourself up so when you weld one side, so even if you're welding together like a wishbone or something on a bench, you know, or even something like that, you want to set yourself up as deep as you can from the other side so you can kind of get to where you left off and bring it around. But I think that worked out nicely, and just going to go ahead and run it a little further, cool it down, and I might take a break to let it cool even more just because I don't want to melt the headliner here. Oh, also I'll bring my tungsten in just a touch, just because it doesn't have to be sticking out as far. Alright, cool. Let this cool down so it doesn't get so heat soaked. We'll check it out after that. Alright, give them a few minutes, and go ahead and keep on going a little bit. And then what I want to do also is add some tacks to these tubes while I'm in here to make sure nothing moves around. I'm over here, I'm going to go ahead and add a tack to this number 15 crossbar, since really I don't think I'll be moving it at this point. And then I'll let all this stuff kind of cool and work on moving forward with the funny car cage. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and get the passenger side of the main hoop also. Give it a couple of tacks as well. Alright, I'm going to have to move it. Alright, so one more spot I want to get before I move forward. This is that 42A and the number 15 crossbar. I've kind of got you in the back seat area looking forward towards the driver's side, and just going to put a little on here just so that I don't have to reach in there later. I just wanted to get some more on this tube just so it doesn't pop loose if anything warps around. Alright, so in order to move forward, I need to actually drill a gas expansion hole where the front of the forward inner funny car hoop is going to land. It's going to be kind of tricky, but I'm going to have to drill it right at the bottom where that thing sits, just because I can't get the drill way up in there. But that should help. I've got a hole on the bottom, but it's nice to have one on the top because hot gases rise. They'll expand anywhere, but it just kind of helps. And then I also need to polish this up. There'll be time to go ahead and start fitting all that forward stuff in. So we'll check that out next. Alright, looking good. All right, cool. So I've got the 41A, also the 41B mocked up, along with a couple of the helmet guard bars up here. And what I'm looking at right now is just, I need to make some adjustments to these bars. So this one is just a little long, and it was before, if you remember, but I just wanted to be able to kind of tailor it to fit at this point when I'm ready to actually start putting everything in with this stuff all tacked together. So that's perfectly fine. But I'm looking at the helmet guard bars here, just kind of determining how much I need to shorten this. And it's looking like about 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to run over to my shop, shorten this up. All right, so I shortened this up and cleaned it up. I've actually tried it once since and touched it up just a little more. I want to see how this fits in here. Put it right against the tape mark there, and that's looking really nice. Cool. So you can see, you know, it still has that nice trend. It's parallel. And I've also added these tape marks since the last scene, and I did that just looking right across both roof bars and putting tape right where that needs to go, and this is looking really good. So I actually I need to pull this off and just touch the notches up a tiny little bit, fit it all back up, and there'll be time to make sure everything's nice and clean and tack it in here, and move on to this bar, and we'll be looking really good. Cool. All right, cool. Got the notches cleaned up on this a little bit, and yeah, that feels really nice sitting in there. I'm going to secure it in place, see how it's looking. Perfect. That's looking great. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and clean everything up really well with acetone, and then it'll be time to go ahead and I will tack this forward inner funny car hoop in, and then put this in place, making sure everything's good to go. Then we'll be looking awesome. All right, cool. Did a little final cleanup on this, and also went ahead and cleaned it out really nice with acetone, and it's looking nice and clean in there, inside and out. Now I'm gonna go ahead and mock it up in place. Cool. All right. Oh, that's looking good. I'm gonna put a couple tacks on this, and then go ahead and fit these sidebars, and we'll be looking great. All right, so this feels nice and tight. So this is in a good spot. Now I'm gonna go ahead and tack the bottom in here onto the 15 crossbar. And this is fitting just a tiny bit loose, so I think as long as I tack the top of this, it'll pull that tight. But if not, it's still definitely not showing a gap. So it's good enough to weld either way. Let's go ahead and add a tack here. Alright, so it's pretty much exactly the same. So that's good. It's pretty tight. So that'll be good. When I weld this bar in, it should be perfect. Cool. Alright, I'm going to add one more tack to the back of this to hold it in place, and then move forward to that bar, or inward. Alright, got the tube all cleaned up, and I've been working on just final fit up. It just drops right into place and looks great. So what I want to go ahead and do now is tack it in, and I'm going to start probably right here and then tack the front. And what I'm going to be doing is looking down both of the roof bars and just making sure that this bar is level and parallel with it. I'm going to push this up just a little tiny bit, and it should be perfect. Sweet. Put you in the back seat and change your angle a little bit so I could get in here and add a couple of tacks. Alright, it's in there. Nice and tight. Awesome. Let's fit that next bar. Alright, so for the next bar, I've already started on it, as we saw before, and I'm liking all the angles, but it fits like this. And so, if you can see this bar, the number 47, I want it to line up with that. Now, I've already clearanced it to kind of fit on this curve here, and I'm happy with that notch. So since this is just a straight notch in the rear, it doesn't have some kind of crazy curvature to it, and this is clearanced out to fit on this curve, I'm going to go ahead and shorten this tube on this side. Now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and I'm going to carefully measure the length that the top of this tube needs to be, which will be that distance. So that's what I'm going to work on now. I'm going to go ahead and use the notcher in my shop to shorten this up, and then once I get it fitted up, we'll check it out and tack it in. Alright, so I went ahead and shortened this up, and it's really close. If I kind of push it down into place, it gets real close. But I'm looking at the notches, and it looks like I'm going to have to take a bit out of the top of this, and I think this one's going to be fine, but I just want to kind of do one at a time and get it to fit right down in there, then I can tack it in. Getting close. Drum roll please. Ta-da! Fits in there nicely. It's looking good, and looks like it's at the right angle and everything. So that's awesome. Took a little bit of fitting, a lot of back and forth, just trimming it just a tiny little bit. Didn't want to go too far, but it's looking good now. So I'm going to clean everything up inside and out, and we'll tack it in and be looking good. Cool. Alright, everything's all cleaned up. It's sitting in there nicely. I'm going to go ahead and tack it in. tacked in and looking good. Sweet. All right, well, that's looking really good. I might adjust it a little more, but it looks like I've got it lined up really nicely with the rest of the harness level bars there. 46, 47, and 48. That's looking great. And you can see the that bar and how it lines up nicely with the roof bars. Everything's nice and level and parallel. I still have to add the helmet guard bars. So obviously I already have this one in, but I haven't tacked it in yet, and it's loose. I need to add one here, and I'll have to put one in here after I add the outer forward funny car stuff after this thing gets door bars. Now I want to go ahead and have the driver over here to check everything out, and also maybe sit in the car so I can do just a final double check, make sure measurement for the height of those helmet guard bars. But we'll check that out in a later video. We'll check this thing out. Well, I really hope you guys enjoyed watching the build process of the funny car section of the roll cage and the Chevelle project here. There's plenty more to come, and I hope you guys will tune in for that next time. I'm going to try to be a little more frequent with videos, and I think I'm going to shorten projects up into shorter sections so I can get them out quicker for you guys to check out. But hope you guys tune in. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. And again, I want to thank you guys for liking the videos and also subscribing to the channel. I really appreciate it. Still, it's really cool to be over 1,000 subscribers. And remember, on Halloween, this channel will be a year old, so that's pretty cool. Thanks again. Y'all take care. We'll see you next time.